everyone. I will try to be as brief as possible by bringing forward some of the experience we've managed to have in the United Network of Young Peace Builders. So, as I was mentioning, I represent the United Network of Young Peace Builders, which is a network of 80 youth and peace-building organizations that work at grassroots level in 50 countries. More specifically, it's a community of young people that are deeply committed towards building peace in their societies and increasing youth participation in peace building, particularly in conflict-affected regions. The members are engaged in doing vital work such as the reintegration of ex-combatants in DRC or countering violent extremism in Nigeria, working on partnerships among young people between Pakistan and India, or doing interfaith work in Indonesia, just to name a few examples. UNOY is also the co-chair of the subgroup on youth participation in peacebuilding at the UN Interagency Network on Youth Development. Today I will just discuss some of the realities that we've encountered, our members have encountered while working at grassroots levels, as well as some results of the advocacy that we've managed to do and that hopefully contributes to advancing our field, but also to achieving SDG 16. When we look at the general narrative around youth, and I'm sure that a lot of us are familiar with this, unfortunately, we can see that more often than not, they are portrayed by the media or decision makers sometimes as either victims or perpetrators of violence. In the recent years, particularly, the narrative of youth as perpetrators of violence, joining extremist groups, or creating trouble seems to have gained significant traction. And one of the missions of UNOY Peace Builders has been to show that that's actually not the case. And we've really tried to map the sector, to look at youth and peacebuilding sector together with Search for Common Ground. There has been a report named exactly like that called Mapping a Sector, Bridging the Evidence Gap on Youth-Driven Peacebuilding. And this report provides a first broad-scale global overview of the youth-led peacebuilding community. The study indicates that despite various challenges, youth-led organizations are actually engaged in noteworthy endeavors for peace and have achieved remarkable successes. Just to show a few things that we've also managed to find out, the main strengths of these youth and peacebuilding organizations lie in their ability to mobilize youth and communities, create open organizational structures that are built on trust, value, and sense of belonging to a common vision to do something for their communities, develop skills and expertise among themselves and their target group on youth, peace, and security issues, leverage local knowledge and access what is usually identified as inaccessible youth, and also acquire credibility in their communities by implementing important community development work, sometimes in areas where no other actors exist. The results also showed that these youth organizations are already gender balanced and their initiatives target both youth as well as relevant members of their community, such as local, national decision makers, elderly people, families, displaced persons, and so on. As for challenges, the study shows that approximately 49% of youth and peacebuilding organizations work with a budget of under $5,000 a year, 30% of them working with a budget of under $1,000 a year. As I was talking to my colleagues working in several youth and peacebuilding organizations in Eastern and Southern Africa, I learned that they rarely had access to a computer or were using a shared office that they could access infrequently. We are all too familiar with the gaps in the youth field, I believe. And also I want to mention some other challenges such as lack of capacity, training, difficulties in collaborating with their governments, or working in extremely fragile and dangerous situations. However, there's been one important step that maybe some of you are familiar with in recognizing the positive role of young people as agents of change, and that was Resolution 2250 on youth, peace, and security, which was adopted in December 2015. Together with the youth advocacy team of United Network of Young Peace Builders, we have worked on this resolution, and why is it so important is because it's the first paper to actually formalize the youth, peace, and security agenda as a relevant political field. It also urges member states to give youth a greater voice in decision-making at the local, national, regional, and international levels, and to consider setting up mechanisms that would enable young people to meaningfully participate in peace processes. We can also see here target indicator 16.7, ensuring responsive, inclusive, participatory, and representative decision-making at all levels. Of course, the resolution also means that the specific needs of young people and their views will be taken into account into policies, program, distribution of funds, and so on. And Ala has made a reference of 1325 and how it's really important that you have that piece of paper when you show up talking to decision makers at different levels. I think that's also what the resolution is doing to us. And right now we are learning how to implement it is really something that we're learning by doing. But I do want to emphasize one of the really positive things that has happened, namely at the World Humanitarian Summit last year, the Syrian Youth Assembly was constituted, which is exactly what it says, a young Syrian Youth Assembly. And working with on the framework of 2250 resolution, we have had already some success in including these people in the peace processes that are now happening on Syria. It's of course a work in progress, but for us it has been a really meaningful success. To conclude, I just want to say that it seems that young people are being called more and more to step up their initiatives to create change, to participate, and we are showing up. At the same time, due to a lot of advocacy, it seems that decision makers are increasingly willing to meet us halfway. Again, it is a really work in progress. But I think this is really positive because we know that implementing 2250, achieving the SDGs, and also the Agenda 2030 overall really requires top-bottom, bottom-up, multi-sectorial, all-hands-on-deck kind of attitude. So hopefully we'll get there. Thank you so much.